Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. I am the CHALL, and today Chall Chats Doncaster Rovers 4, Accrington Stanley 0 on the DRFC post-match press talk. This is the first of our post-match press talk videos today. Of course, we'll be doing another, hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be doing another pre-match press talk with Tom Coates of the Yorkshire Post for the Gillingham game, fingers crossed. No promises as of yet. But for the post-match today with Accrington Stanley, we have Ricky from Doncaster Free Press. Ricky, how are we doing today?
Yeah, good. Thank you, mate. How are you?
I am very good, thank you. Much more happy after Saturday with that performance. So in today's video, we're going to be digesting the post-match press conference from Saturday from Grant McCann and also discuss a few interesting topics that, of course, have been browling up amongst supporters over this past week. So let's start off with the post-match press conference and some of the big talking points from that. Obviously, going into this game, one of the big kind of squad news updates was, of course, the exclusion of Harrison Biggins due to a precaution. Should be back in training, I think it's Wednesday or Thursday or Tuesday. Yeah. So obviously Biggins should be back in training. Obviously, he's one of the players that's still out of contract and still yet to sign a new deal. Obviously, it didn't look like they were missing Biggins with that performance on Saturday, but obviously it's good to have another body back in training for next week's matches.
Yeah, that's it. I think this is where it helps McCann having such a big squad. I think it's been publicised that Rovers have got probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in League Two. So, but yeah, you've got real options now. You look at the bench and what he had, and then you look at the players that weren't in the squad on Saturday. McGrath is one, Biggins is another. Biamou obviously out injured, close. There's so many options when everyone's fit, and I think that's probably looking forward to next season. I was jumping the gun a bit, but I'd imagine he wants a smaller, trimmed squad as opposed to, 30 plus players, because you're just having to let people down every week, and you're having to tell people that they're not even on the bench, which is when everyone's fit. That's a big issue. But yeah, Biggins I think he's been doing well last few weeks before he got injured. I think his output's improved. Really good presser, and obviously if he is going to be fit for Barrow on Saturday, I don't think it's a case of him coming straight back in, because I think, as we'll probably get onto, Westbrooke did really well on against Accrington.
Yeah, absolutely. Just on Harrison Biggins, and obviously we know he's one of the players that's still out of contract and still yet to sign a brand new deal. In your personal opinion, do you think he's more than likely to sign a deal? I'm not trying to press for any exclusives or anything like that, but do you think that Harrison Biggins is probably one of those getting a contract or the next to get a contract, or do you think that he could be one of those that maybe heads out through the door?
I think it's difficult, because you look at how many are going to be there. Central midfielders are going to be there next year. So you've got Close, Bailey, Westbrooke, potentially Biggins, potentially Rowe. There's a lot of options. I probably missed a few out there as well. Do you know what I mean? It's a lot of options, and whether McCann wants him on board, I don't know. Has he justified it? Obviously, I've only been here since January, so I've only seen Biggins really for the last 3 months, and I think he's done well, certainly the last 2 months, but he'll probably be a better place to tell me how he's done over the course of his time at Rovers. What would you say, Chal? Would you give him a deal?
You know what? It's a hard one, because since he's been in this run of form, he's been nothing short of brilliant, because in the position that he's played in. But I think it's fair to say that before that, when we were struggling with the availability, when we were struggling with chopping and changing formations, making sure what was working with the players we had available, it was very hit and miss. He can score a bicycle kick against Forest Green, he can hit a 25-yarder a few times. But overall, the performances seem to have been a bit hit and miss in the first half of the season. It's the second half of the season where it's turned up. But then that argument comes in from the entire supporters, not really me in particular, but from the fan base as a whole. There is this question of, does one half of a season warrant a brand new contract, or do they kind of play it safe and go, right, first half of the season has been hit and miss, second half's been much, much better. Let's give you a 1-year deal. If you do, like you'd have in the second half of the season for that entire 1-year deal, we'll extend it longer. If not, we'll not sign you on to another deal. Same with Bobby Faulkner. I think that one was very, very smart in terms of, right, you've had an injury hit season, we'll give you a new 1-year deal, a 1-year extension, which I've known about that for the last week anyway, but we now got it confirmed in the press conference the past week. And McCann said, I think pretty much the situation will be, right, 1 year to show what you can do. If you can stay injury-free and have a good season, we'll sign you on for longer. If not, we'll let you go at the end of that contract. Would it be safe to give Biggins a 1-year deal based on that?
think so. Yeah, I think that's a decent shout. But then you flip it and say, well, we don't know his situation. He might have another offer that's, more secure for him. I know he's not particularly old or young, is he? I think he's in that mid-20s bracket. So he might want a security of a 2-3 year deal if he can get that somewhere else. So, but yeah, I think it's one of those where we're seeing more and more contract news being leaked now, not leaked, being kind of drip fed out. Wood, Maxwell, Westbrooke. The longer it goes on, probably the more uncertainty grows. So, yeah, I think if it's not resolved by the end of the season, he's one of those. I think priority-wise for Rovers fans, I think he's probably lower down the ladder. The one that jumps out straight away is Molineux. The players that are our Rovers, and obviously then the Loanees, which again we'll probably come on to. But I think Biggins is, as in terms of supporters, I think if you said you've got to pick one of the two, I don't think there's any argument who everyone would pick.
Yeah, I no offense to Biggins, but I think the majority of supporters would probably pick Molineux over Biggins if they had to choose between one or the other. Going on to Zain Westbrooke then, I mean, coming into that starting position, we know that Zain's just coming back from that injury. We know that Grant's been working with him to get him up to the standard where he needs to be. And again, he showed exactly how important it was. And you know what? I said this in my reaction. I said this in my upcoming review as we're recording this, but of course, by the time it goes out, the review will be out. And I said this about Westbrooke. I said that he was playing like a shadow striker almost in the game on Saturday. It was very much, dropping out wide, cutting it back on the inside. He was pressing in the opposition's half. He's the kind of attacking midfielder that McCann wants to play with in this 4-2-3-1 formation, which can, in some situations, drop deeper into the 4-3-3. Westbrook's the kind of player that McCann wants to work with, and it's very, very evident. How important is Westbrooke going to be next season if we can keep him injury-free? Because we're starting to see more of the Coventry City Westbrooke rather than the Bristol Rovers Westbrooke every single game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well he's kind of making up for lost time into, the injuries he's had or the injury he had. I think that was his first league start since November on Saturday. So, what's that, 5 months? And he's obviously got that security of his contract having been sorted. So he probably is playing with that freedom for these last 3 or 4 matches. But yeah, I think whenever I think of Westbrooke, I think I instantly think of that Coventry. The team when he was at Coventry. Obviously, Biamou being here, he'll know. It's a shame that he's obviously out for the season now. We don't know what's going to happen with him. So, but yeah, I think Westbrooke will be a big player purely because making up for lost time. He's lost a lot of minutes this season, lost a lot of game time, and he's certainly when he's fit and firing. He's certainly for League Two, he's right up there in terms of best for the position he plays.
Yeah, 100 million%. And we were speaking there about Biamou. Obviously, it is unfortunate about that injury. 10 to 12 weeks, looking to be back in pre-season. Contract-wise, it's a bit of a tough one because on the one hand, he made such an impact in the couple of months he's been here before that injury. But on the other hand, again, that injury record, we've said this with Tom from the Yorkshire Post in the past as well. Injury records can hinder a potential transfer. And I think that's one of the main things that McCann will be looking for in terms of deals for the summer, in terms of new faces. He'll be looking at people's injury records and thinking, right, do I take that risk on someone with that injury record? So it's a bit of a 50-50 scenario with Biamou. Do you believe that a contract can be offered potentially, or do you think it's one of those where that 10 to 12 week injury may have dampened his chances?
Yeah, it's a tough one. So I think they've got a lot of credit in the bank because they took a punt on him, gave him a deal, kind of got him back to match fitness. He'd not played 2 years, 2 and a bit years since he last played professionally. So they took the chance on him. So I think they've got a lot of bargaining power in that respect. But once he's back from injury, so when we're talking 10, 12 weeks is what? June? Probably getting into July. It's whether they want him to stick around and vice versa, whether he wants to stick around. I think a pay-as-you-play deal, something like that, maybe a deal till Christmas, something similar that he's been on while he's been here at the minute. Because he's certainly showed, flourishes, hasn't he? He's got 2 goals, I think. So yeah, I think he's a different option as well. He's not similar. He's similar to Anside, but he's different as well. But again, we don't know what league Rovers are going to be in. So all that to consider, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously another striker in the conversation for next season when he comes back is George Miller. Obviously he's out of contract next summer. Obviously if Biamou stays or someone else comes in to replace him, Ironside's still here on form. Billy's been coming back into the squad now and has been on form in that game off the bench. The more you look at it, the more you sort of consider what George Miller's future is going to be, because before the injury that he suffered, he was pretty good. In a part of the season where the form in the league wasn't amazing, the cup run was amazing, and Miller was a big part of that. What do you think Miller's future is going to be? Because he's still got a massive part to play in the squad. Is he the man to replace Biamou in pre-season?
Well, that's it. It's also how many. Well, if you're playing just the one up front, then obviously at the minute Ironside's head and shoulders first choice. But then, like you say, if they keep Miller's under contract, if they keep Biamou as well, that's 3. Would he want 4 strikers? I'm not too sure. There's Lavery as well, which we've not even mentioned. And off the top of my head, I can't remember what his contract situation is. I think he might be out. You'll probably know better than me.
He's out of contract this summer.
Yeah, so I would imagine he'll be gone.
Yeah, no offense to Lavery, but I think he's out of here.
Yeah. But then this is what I mean with this is the problem with such a big squad. He's going to have to make these decisions. I think he'll thin out the squad because you just don't want. And I'm doing a piece for the morning on the new head of medical, David Rennie, and how he's already making an impact. And I think going forward, that'll stand them in good stead. There'll certainly not be the injuries they've had, or touch wood, they'll not have the injuries they've had this season. I mean, it's been double figures, long periods of the season. So hopefully next season they won't have that, and they'll have a thinned out squad as well. So I think, I don't want to say quality over quantity, but I think it's certainly going to be a streamlined squad, 20, 23, 25 max, you'd have thought. You don't want it to be in the 30s. And also the money side of that as well. You think about, if you're paying 33 professionals, you get rid of 7 or 8, and that saves on the budget. So it's all stuff to consider. But yeah, I think in terms of the forwards, it's hard. I would personally keep Biamou around, but again, it's obviously Grant's prerogative to decide. But I think he's shown enough, hasn't he? In the 8-9 games he's played to certainly warrant sticking around.
Yeah, he definitely plays an important role, and we're speaking there about the money available and stuff like that. I was speaking to Gavin Baldwin on the way in on the morning of the Accrington game, and I was doing my recruitment series this summer, and I basically said to him, he asked me sort of like, what prerogatives are you working with? What budget are you working with? What kind of players are you looking for? And I said, look, I'm looking for 6, maybe 7 positions in total, 6, 7 signings. And the main thing is out of contract players, loan players, and the maximum I'll spend on a fee for a player is 100 grand maybe. So, it's it's not the biggest budget in League Two. It'll definitely be a decent budget in League Two. I don't think there's no kind of going away from that. I don't think that's going to be any surprise to anyone. It will be a decent budget in League Two. Will it be top 3, top 5 budget? Maybe not. I'd say maybe top 10 at a push, but I would say the lower end of the top 10 maybe. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's who you get with what you've got to work with. And I've always gone with that prerogative in the summer and even in January. It doesn't matter how much money you've got, as long as you do the right thing with the money you've got, you will achieve more success than someone who just overspends on a quality of player that isn't playing to the level that they need to be for the money they've spent. Barrow being a massive example of that. They've not spent loads and loads of money, and yet they're fighting for playoffs and was fighting for automatics just a couple of months ago. So the summer's vitally important to get the right players for what we've got to work with. And we spoke about contracts then. We spoke about the Loanees there. Adelaikin, Lotatala, Matthew Craig, the 3 main ones. Obviously, Tom Nixon, he was great at the start of the season, and then he's just not been able to nail down a place with Sterry's form coming back into it over the last couple of months. So, I no offense to Tom. I love Tom off the pitch, but I feel like he's going to go back to Hull and he might not come back. Billy Waters, he's came off the bench against Accrington, did very well, but again, I just don't know if he's going to get a permanent contract. It's not depending on what McCann wants. So you're looking at the 3 main ones: Craig, Lotatala, Adelaikin. Everyone wants Adelaikin to sign. Everyone wants Lotatala to sign. Speaking with Tom from Yorkshire Post, the most we'll get from Matthew Craig is a loan deal, but he's not ruled out the possibility of coming back either. So for those 3 Loanees, do you think it's vital to get those 3 coming back, or do you think McCann will have a plan in place to have alternatives lined up if they do not sign.
Oh yeah, I'd be amazed if he didn't have like contingency plans. I think of the three, I think Craig would be the hardest one. I certainly don't think they'll be able to sign him permanently. Obviously, being a Spurs player, and
Yeah,
I think I wouldn't rule out another loan spell. But whether he's one of them that Spurs want him to go up and up, League One this season, next season, Championship, and then gradually build him up. Obviously, if he helps Rovers, achieve the unthinkable and go up, then there's every chance he could be back here next season. But I think he's the least likeliest one. Obviously, Adelican, you'd like to think they're in with a huge shout of bringing him back. And then TLT's the one for me where I think he's got another year left at Hull.
Yeah.
But you look at the goalies in front of him at Hull. Obviously, they're pushing. I don't think they'll probably not get playoffs. I think they've got a way to go to get playoffs. But
I think they're fading away.
Yeah, so they're going to be Championship. Whether he's going to get a look in there, I'm not too sure. And he's another one you talked to him and he's loved his time at Donny. So whether they can, it's what Hull value him at. It's not necessarily what Donny can afford to pay, I suppose it is, but it's whether Hull are willing to entertain that. But he's been great. That Sutton game, it's kind of coincided with everything that's gone well since, the last few months, one defeat since then. So, and he's been a big part of that.
Yeah, I probably agree with you there. I think Matthew Craig's the hardest of the three to get. I think if he's not going to come back to us, I expect him to maybe go to someone like a Leyton Orient in League One. Yeah. Especially if we don't go up through seventh this year, I think that someone like a Leyton Orient can take him on, and it's very, very local to Tottenham. It seems like the ideal fit in that division. Loanees is a hard one because, again, what's Hull's plans for, and do they see him with a pathway moving forward? If they don't, what's the point of keeping him? You can get a bit of money out of it, and with a year left on his contract, it's not going to be a huge fee. It could be a very minimal fee with a year left. They could even terminate his clause early, depending on how much money it is to buy him out of his last year. Adelaken's out of contract this season at Lincoln in the summer. I think he's staying in Donny at the minute. He wants to stay in the local area. He's come out and said that. You'd look and say, who's the clubs in our region that could get him? Barnsley, too high. Rotherham, way too high. Wednesday, way too high. United, way too high. Scunthorpe and Grimsby, too low or roundabouts. So you'd think that Rovers would probably be the ideal shout for Adelaide, and you'd probably put Adelaide in the most likely and Craig the least likely.
Yeah, Adelaide. It's fascinating, Adelaide, because it'd be so interesting to see where he goes. I mean, Lincoln must be kicking themselves. They've not, by all accounts, there's no clause in his deal where they can trigger it and automatically get him signed of the year. Obviously, he's beyond the age where they can do that. And I mean, yeah, they must be kicking themselves. I think he's going to be probably one of the most sought after free agents in the EFL, certainly for League One and Two.
Yeah,
because there will be League One clubs looking at him. I'm thinking of someone like Carlisle that are going to come down from League One. Likewise, maybe a Stockport that goes up to League One. So it'll be so interesting to see where he ends up. But I think, again, Donny have got that. They've got a kind of a head start. Two fronts. One, because of how well he's playing here and the form he's in. He's in the form of his life. And two is McCann. He's worked with him twice now, him and Cliff. And they just seem to get something out of him. So you'd like to think they would add quite a lot to Donny's bargaining power, but you don't know, dear. You don't know the situation. I think he's about 27, 28 possibly. So he'll probably want to settle down, and I know Rovers fans will be wanting it to be here. Fingers crossed it is, but yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see where he ends up. But can you imagine if Rovers were to get a deal done for him? I mean, that would give him such a big boost going into next season, regardless of League One or Two.
Yeah, you know what? I reckon Adelaide could end up, if Rovers market it and PR it right, I think Adelaide can end up being the first signing of the summer. And that could be such a tremendous. And imagine if Loanees is the second signing of the summer. That would be just two signings right off the bat, tremendous start. And Rovers transfer window could easily be a 10 out of 10 out of those first two signings alone. It just depends on the rest of the window. In terms of contracts remaining, then obviously we know there's players that are in those brackets that have that are exiting at the end of the season at the moment, which we pretty much know are going to leave anyway. Lavery being in that bracket, unfortunate for him.
Yeah.
Luke Molineux, though, that's an interesting one because obviously he's been one of the star players. We know there are fans that have questioned the consistency in front of goal, but we know his current form at the moment. We know he's been just vital in terms of the way we play and the way we set up. And fans really want the Molineux contracts. And I spoke with Tom from the Yorkshire Post about the length of contracts and how long, deals take. Should we be worrying? Should we be panicking? It's like, the longer these deals goes on, we just never know what goes on behind closed doors. Rovers are very much a club that, I mean, you'll know this, Ricky. Rovers are a club that keep their cards close to their chest, and that's a smart way of thinking. But for fans, it'll be a very frustrating way of thinking. So Molineux, would you say it's likely that Rovers do a deal for him at this stage, or would you say that it's still a question in the air?
It's like you say, they do keep the cards close to the chest. I think I'm hopeful he'll stay. I really hope he does. I know he had a conversation. I think this would have been probably February time, and at that point he said there'd been no conversations about extending it. Obviously, we're 2 months down the line now, so I'd be amazed if those talks haven't took place. I'm pretty sure they will have, but how far they've gone will remains to be seen. But again, he's very similar to Adelakun. I think there'll be a lot of clubs looking at him. A free agent or soon to be free agent. Some of the clubs I mentioned there, Carlisle, I know he's from that neck of the woods, not necessarily Cumbria, but Northeast. They'll be a decent sized club for League Two when they come down. Yeah, he'll not be without suitors, but it's whether he wants to stay and continue the work he's done. He's been as good as anybody this last month or 6 weeks. So yeah, I think him and Adelakun, if Rovers could get them two over the line, that will be, like you said, it kickstart the transfer window. And also as well, those two staying would send a big message out. And that I think that would attract a lot of other players, the caliber of players they could attract in the summer. So yeah, for me, I'm looking at the list now of players that, since I last put it together, the players that are out of contracts. Obviously, you can take Wood off that, take Maxwell, Westbrooke, who's the other one close?
Bobby Faulkner.
And Faulkner, yeah. So the ones left that I'm looking at that are standing out, Molineux's right at the top. The others on it, Tommy Rowe, John Taylor, and then the rest of them. Biggins as well. So they're the three senior guys, and the others are, a lot of them are at the younger side of things. Bottomley, Kalea, Flint, Ravenhill. I'm not too sure on Flint, to be fair. I'd have to check that again, but.
Yeah, well,
the senior guys.
Will Flint signed I think he agreed the 2-year deal with an option for an extra year at the end of his scholarship, because it was a similar deal they offered to Sam Stroud-Brown, because I know Sam signed it first and then Flint signed it second. Yeah,
so of the senior guys, obviously Molineux's the most pressing one. Again, I think I would put Taylor in with Lavery in so much as I can't see that getting extended. And then Rowe and Biggins are the two for me. Rowe and Biggins, question marks over them two, but definitely Molineux is the one to nail down next.
100 million%. Right there, let's get into the game against Accrington Stanley then. I mean, there's not a lot we can say on this because overall, I think it was just a really pressing performance. I thought Accrington, I said this in the reaction and I'm saying this in the review as well. There were a few moments in that game where Accrington looked like they were going to try and string something together. But again, the constant pressure from Rovers pressed them into uncomfortable situations where they consistently lost the ball. And they were being pressed in defensive areas and were being constantly put under pressure. And Accrington just couldn't find their rhythm in that game. And as soon as one went in, it became 2-3-4. And I think this got said numerous times, and some people may say it didn't get said enough. It could have been 7 or 8.
Yeah, easily could have. I think 6 minutes when Adelakun scored, I mean, that just set the tone really, didn't it? I mean, Accrington they're not going to go down, they're not going to go up. Obviously the new manager, but he's obviously been there a long time. I think he worked under Coleman on the coaching staff there. So, yeah, it just looked like a perfect opposition for Donny to pick off, and they did. I don't think they really got that second gear. I put that in one of the reports I did. It was just really solid. 2 goals in each half. Never looked like conceding. I can't really remember TLT being challenged by anything of note. And yeah, it was good that they mixed it up as well. I think 4 different scorers. Obviously, Adelican got an assist, but 3 different assist makers as well. So yeah, perfect day at the office. No injuries that we know of. And yeah, it was they just look solid, and that's where the confidence from this run they've been on. That's where they are at the minute, and it'd be interesting against Barrow on Saturday. I know there's obviously a couple of games midweek what Barrow are involved in against Crawley, but it'll be fascinating to see because if Donny do a job on them and make it look as easy as it was on Saturday, then it's going to make for a very exciting run.
Yeah, it's going to be a very exciting end to the season. Obviously, Barrow coming up on Saturday as well. They're going to be no mean feat despite their recent form. Colchester are still fighting to stay in this league, but they've now got the ball in their court, if you say, the kind of hand in their favour. And then obviously at the end of the season, Gillingham, I don't think they're going to reach the playoffs now, so they're very much on the beach at this stage. It's going to be 3 interesting games, and there is that kind of doubt starting to seep in amongst some supporters that maybe we won't get 9 from 9. But I personally have full confidence. I don't expect us to win all 3, but I have a confidence that we can win all 3 games.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? I mean, McCann said on Saturday that he was thinking of giving the players a day off, but for this coming week, obviously with no midweek match. But obviously, I think his staff kind of quickly nipped that in the bud. And why not? Why go around changing things? And he's right when he says they've not achieved anything yet. And I know they've been on a great run, but if they just fall short of the playoffs and don't get that top 7 spot, then I think they're on the right course. Keep the foot on the gas, keep going as they've been. And yeah, I think, like I said, the run they've been on, they just look impenetrable really at the minute. Barrow, be interesting to see what they do against Crawley tomorrow. And I think I did another piece today with James Maxwell, where he didn't even realise that Crawley were playing Barrow on Tuesday. And I think, he's probably elusive to it. Same as the players. I think that's how McCann's drilled it into them. He wants them just focusing on them, leave it to us guys and the supporters to kind of, look at the games on Tuesday night and see which result will be better than which. But yeah, I think just focus on what they're doing, and it'll be really interesting because if they do a job on Barrow, what a way to end the season at home, the regular season at home, and then going into those 2 long old treks at Colchester and Gillingham. But Colchester, I was actually working this out earlier. I think if Colchester win tomorrow night, I think they've got Grimsby off the top of my head. They win tomorrow night, they're as good as safe.
Yeah.
So they may be safe by the time Donny go there. Again, will they be on the beach by the time Donny go there? Gillingham, nothing to play for. So it could really, work in Donny's favour, the results tomorrow night. So yeah, Barrow's the one. Get past Barrow and then see where they're at. They could easily be going into that Colchester game in the top 7. And, it'd be theirs to lose then.
Absolutely. And that means, again, it'll be in our hands to do what we need to do. And that, you know what, that could be the biggest test of our form, because despite the form we've been on, the biggest kind of context behind that form is that we've been chasing people. Yeah. And if we beat Barrow, we have an easy chance of getting into top 7, which means for the last game or 2, we could be the hunted, which puts us in the most amount of pressure during this run of form, because we become the reverse of that role during this form. So would you say that becoming the hunted rather than the hunter before the end of the season could be the biggest kind of test for this run of form? Or do you think that it could just be another part of why we need to just keep winning?
I think it's interesting with the 18-game table that Grant keeps talking about. I genuinely think they're not looking at the league table. Obviously, they will. Players will privately, but they're just focusing on that. If they finish top of that, and they are top by a decent amount at the minute, but if they continue to finish top of that, go into that last game, if say they're in 7th and they only need to avoid defeat on the last day of the season, I don't think that'll change the mind frame. They'll still be going to win because obviously they'll want the record as well if they're still on course for that. So, yeah, I don't want to say anything to curse it, do you? So, but yeah, they just keep on playing how they've been playing, and the competition for places as well. That only aids it. And yeah, I just think the run they're on, Barrow will be tough, but I think the two after, like I said, hopefully by then Colchester are kind of done their business and they're safe. And yeah, hopefully it can be a good end to the season. But yeah, I get what you're saying with complacency, but I don't think McCann I don't think he's the guy to kind of allow that, is he?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, McCann, fair play to him. He's keeping a level head. He's only focusing on himself and his team. He's not looking at anyone else. And maybe that's the mindset you need to going into a run like this, where you can sneak into 7th place out of nowhere, where you think 2 months ago we were near the bottom 2, and now when we could be slipping into the playoff spot, which is just it just shows you how tight League 2 is as well. It shows you how anyone can beat anyone on any given day. Anyone could just switch on like that, and anyone could just finish as high as they never thought possible by the end of this season. So it's a very good process to have, being very level-headed and thinking about yourselves only and not on the teams around you, going into the end of the season. Obviously, finally, talking about the summer, obviously it depends what kind of league we're in, etc. But obviously pre-season is going to be a massive conversation this summer. We know that transfer is going to be a big conversation this summer. In terms of when we look at this squad, ruling out any more contracts we need to sign, is there any positions in particular that kind of sticks out to you as you think McCann will be probably looking at in the summer as a priority?
I was having to think about this the other day. I think goalkeeper's the obvious one. I think, I know Lawler is under contract for another year, but he's obviously been out really the entire second half of the season. Louis Jones is obviously under contract. Don't know what's going to happen with TLT. So I think that needs to be nailed down, the keeper situation. I think centre half, you've obviously got Wood, Anderson, Olawu, McGrath, Faulkner as well. So I think they're quite well stocked there. Fullbacks, you've got Maxwell, Sterry,
Senior,
sorry, yeah.
Would you bring in a cover? Would you bring in another cover on that position on the right?
I think so, yeah. I think like you said, Nixon earlier, it's not really worked out so much the second half of the season for him. This is the thing with loan signings. The problem with loan signings has always been if they do well, like TLT and Adelican and Craig, then the parent club wants them back. They put a premium on them if they want to sell them, or you get gazumped and someone higher up the pyramid kind of picks them off. Whereas if they come in and it doesn't really work out like Nixon, well, fans will go, well, why? We don't necessarily want him back. Or, you know what I mean? There's always the issue with that with loans. So again, I think being reliant on the loan market, you'll probably know better than me how many they've had this season. It's probably touching double figures for loans if you include Fall and Marsh from earlier in the season.
Yeah, you include Fall and Marsh in there. You mean you've got about 5 already with Nixon, Waters, Adelaide, and Charlotte and Craig. Obviously, the January market was a massive, pretty much a loan market for us in January because of the financial penalty and the restrictions behind that. We obviously have Fowl. We had Marsh. I swear we had. No, it was last season, Stuart Moore. So you're looking at around 8 or 9 loans this season, which again isn't overall amazing, but because of certain situations, that's what we've had to do.
Absolutely, yeah. And then if you go into midfield, I think Bailey, Westbrook, Close for next season. Possibly again, it's reliant on whether he keeps Biggins and Rowe. Will he want to freshen it up? He'll certainly want someone in the Matty Craig mould, I think, whether that's Craig himself or a like for like.
I'd look at a Zach Brunt style midfielder, because I think when Broadbent was at his best at Boreham Wood on loan from Sheffield United last season, I think he had a Zach Brunt style of playmaker next to him. So maybe if you're going to look for another midfielder, you'll look for someone in the style of Zach Brunt or Zach Brunt himself to be brought in, so that it gives Broadbent a bit more confidence as well, because we know Broadbent's going to play some part in next season also.
I forgot about Broadbent. Yeah, he's another one. This is what I mean. This is the problem with a massive squad. Broadbent to add in to that as well. So I think centre mid and centre half are they're well stocked, aren't they? Really, and that's before we've even got to potential arrivals. So I think
and youngsters as well, and youngsters with Flint and Stephen Brown as well, because they're gonna. I'm sure they'll play a part in the Bristol Street Motors Trophy and maybe the early FA Cup stage as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if you're looking at the wings, you've got Molineux hopefully stays, Adelican hopefully stays, but if they don't, then they're certainly going to need to strengthen on the flanks.
You've only got
Kyle
three
Hurst,
wingers.
obviously.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you only got three wingers without Molineux and Adelaide, and you've got Kulea is still on another deal for another
yeah,
year. And then on the other side, you've got Hurst and you've got Satona coming back as well. And apparently, according to Boston fans, Satona had a fantastic spell. So again, you've got three wingers there who are itching at the bit to get some game time. Does McCann stick with that, or do they bring in at least one, maybe two more wingers, including that's not even in, well, it's one or two wingers with Adelaide and Molineux in mind, maybe.
yeah. And then obviously up front, as we've spoken about, Ironside and Miller. And then we don't know obviously what's happened with Biamou. But I was looking at on Saturday. You look at that starting 11. Yeah, I know the goalkeeper situation is not clear, but all the back four are under contract for next year.
Yeah.
Bailey and Westbrooke and Ironside. So that as a spine, that's quite strong. I think definitely the keeper situation needs sorting. And then it's just Molineux and Adelican. I think you keep them on board, and that is a strong spine of a team. I can't see too many from the ones we've not mentioned when they're all at full fitness. That's a strong team, I think.
Yeah.
But obviously, we're just going off the players that are going to stay. There'll definitely be rivals. Hopefully, it's not going to. This is the thing at League Two level. The turnover is massive. It's double figures in and out, and I don't necessarily always think that that's conducive to a good, successful team. Obviously, it works sometimes, but I think Rovers want to get out of that and try and limit it. I would be amazed if they brought in double-figure arrivals this summer. I can't see it with the amount of players they've kept and have got under contract.
I'm predicting maybe 5-6 arrivals.
Yeah.
Depending, it all depends on Molineux's situation. If Molineux signs with the contract, it'll be 5 or 6. If he doesn't sign a new contract, you may be looking at 7 at a push. But definitely around the 5 to 7 mark, 6 at an estimate on average. But that's a good thing though, isn't it? Because for the past couple of years we've gone into double figures for signings, but now we are sort of doing half of that at the very least, which is going to be massive news for Doncaster Rovers going into the summer. And obviously, speaking of the summer, pre-season's another big thing going into the next season as well. We know there's been mentions of a pre-season tour in Spain from the evening with Cliff and Grant. We know they'll have some fixtures in mind here in the UK. Is there any news on pre-season at this stage? I know it's still before the end of the season, but is there anything at this stage with pre-season?
Not that I'm aware of. No, it's on my long list of stuff to kind of keep up my sleeve for once the season ends. Hopefully, that's not for another month or so. Fingers crossed. But yeah, certainly. I mean, you'll be able to tell me. The Rovers, when was the last time they went abroad for pre-season? Because club I covered before. I went abroad last year. It was great covering the club, covering a team that you cover, but doing it abroad and seeing the dedicated fans. Because I know like I say, when was the last time they went abroad? Because if they were to go abroad, I'm sure there'd be plenty of fans that'd be ready to follow them.
It's been quite a few years. I can't even remember when the last time Rovers went abroad. There was that Thailand trip that was always rumored but never happened. That was always a long-standing rumor or meme with Rovers fans that it was the trip that never happened. But as soon as we heard about a talk of Spain for a pre-season tour, some kind of pre-season schedule, then obviously excitement starts to build and you're thinking, right, are the club going to release travel plans? They're going to release like these packages for Rovers fans to buy. How expensive is it? Is it a decent price? How much do Rovers pay towards that? Is there matches in Spain? Is it just a pre-season training camp? All those questions start to come into mind with that one. But obviously here in the UK, there'll be, I'm sure, a couple of non-league fixtures. Obviously, we usually get like your Armthorpes or your Rosingtons or this season they might do something different. They might go for a Retford, which they haven't done for a few years. We know there'll be at least probably 2 home games at the Eco Power during pre-season against a Premiership or a Championship side. We know in the past couple of years we've had Newcastle, we've had Sheffield United, we've had Huddersfield, we've had Rotherham down there as well. So it'd be interesting to see who they invite for pre-season. Will it be Leeds this year? All these questions start, coming up, and it's going to be really interesting to see. If there's any teams in particular that you think could be good opponents in pre-season, either home at the stadium or away, because usually we do a lot of non-league trips away from home for pre-season, is there any teams that stand out to you at this current moment as do you think Rovers might look at for pre-season realistically?
I think obviously it'd be, I think last year you played well, no, because I was there. I covered the Wednesday match, but obviously different divisions. Wednesday had gone up. I think Leeds would be a good shout. You know, to get a high end Championship, or they might go up to Premier League. I think plus the fact that it's a local derby. I mean, you'd get a great attendance for that. The only thing with those is they tend to put them midweek, which always irks me. The Wednesday match was a Tuesday night, from what I remember, and I think just as a spectacle or as an event, put it on a Saturday, you'd have probably got a lot more on the gate. But obviously, you're kind of dependent on the higher up clubs, aren't you, really, and their schedules. But yeah, I think any Premier League game, any Premier League opposition, Championship would be good. But yeah, I'm all over a trip to Spain. I'll be right up for that.
Yeah, if the travel packages aren't too expensive, I'm probably going to end up paying for that, to be fair.
Yeah, it's got to be done.
Absolutely got to be done. But there we go, guys. Thank you very much for watching this episode of the DRFC Press Talk. Ricky, thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah, no worries, Chal.
And thank you very much for watching. Make sure you do like, comment, subscribe. And for now, I am the CHALL. Ta-ra for now, and that is full time.